The ship Esperanza sank in the turbulent waters off the Amazon coast on a dreadful stormy night. Robinson Crusoe, sole survivor of the wreck, desperately clung to a wooden plank that carried him to the mouth of a muddy river. Exhausted, he crawled onto the muddy bank before collapsing unconscious at the foot of a wall of vegetation so dense it seemed impenetrable. Upon awakening, Robinson discovered with horror the extent of his misfortune. No fine sandy beach, no providential coconut tree awaited him. Before him rose a primitive jungle, an inextricable tangle of vines, gigantic trunks and foliage so thick that sunlight struggled to filter through to the spongy ground. The humidity, saturated air, clung to his skin like a sticky second skin, while a disturbing symphony of unknown bird cries, mysterious rustlings and distant roars filled the atmosphere. The first days were torment. Unlike the island of his dreams where fruits fall from trees and fresh water flows in clear streams, this hostile jungle offered him only dangers and privations. The stagnant water of the marshes teemed with leeches and insects, making it unfit for consumption. Robinson had to learn to collect rainwater in large leaves he cut, or extract the precious liquid from certain plant trunks he pierced with carved stones. Food represented an even more formidable challenge. The bright fruits hanging from branches often proved toxic, as he learned to his cost after spending an entire night vomiting and delirious. He developed a cautious method, first observing monkeys and birds to identify edible foods. Thus he discovered certain tart berries, fibrous roots he had to boil at length, and whitish mushrooms that grew on dead trunks. For fire, no providential flint or easily inflammable dry wood. In this perpetually humid atmosphere, Robinson had to show desperate ingenuity. He finally mastered the ancestral friction technique, using a piece of dry bamboo against a board of tender bark. The smallest fire required hours of effort and constant vigilance to maintain a few embers sheltered from the omnipresent humidity. Shelter constituted another major challenge. Impossible to build a solid hut when each morning brought its share of torrential rains and termites devoured wood in a few days. Robinson learned to weave together supple branches to create a structure suspended between several trees, which he covered with a thick mat of interwoven palm leaves. This aerial dwelling protected him from terrestrial predators and sudden floods that regularly transformed the jungle floor into swampland. Dangers lurked at every moment. Venomous snakes concealed themselves under dead leaves, giant spiders wove their deadly traps between branches, and jaguars prowled when night fell, their golden eyes gleaming in the darkness. Robinson learned to recognize the warning signs of their presence: broken branches, claw marks on bark, musky scent in the air. He fashioned rudimentary spears by fire-hardening the tips of long bamboo sticks, and arranged around his shelter pit traps he concealed under a fragile lattice of twigs. Mosquitoes and other biting insects constituted permanent torture. Robinson's body quickly became covered with infected wounds that healed poorly in this tropical atmosphere. He discovered by chance the repellent properties of certain leaves he crushed to smear on his skin, and learned to burn aromatic bark whose smoke temporarily drove away clouds of insects. Solitude weighed even heavier in this oppressive jungle. On his original island, Robinson could at least contemplate the marine horizon and dream of ships in the distance. Here, confined in this vegetal labyrinth, he sometimes lost all sense of direction. The sun remained invisible for entire days, masked by the thick canopy. To avoid sinking into madness, he undertook to carve each day on a tree trunk, thus marking the passage of time that would otherwise have escaped him. Over the months, Robinson developed acute senses and survival reflexes that allowed him not only to subsist, but even to prosper modestly in this hostile environment. He learned the secret language of the jungle, recognizing in the rustling of leaves the approach of a storm, guessing from the agitation of birds the presence of a predator, identifying from traces on the humid ground the passages of different animals. He gradually domesticated his environment, creating paths he regularly maintained, creating food caches in hollow trunks he protected from humidity with resin, even establishing a small garden where he cultivated the edible wild vegetables he had discovered. This impenetrable jungle, which had nearly been his tomb, gradually became his universe. Robinson understood that unlike the traditional island that invites dreams of escape by showing the marine infinite, the dense jungle forced him to look inward, to discover the infinite resources of human ingenuity faced with adversity. In this vegetal prison, he no longer sought to escape, but to adapt, transforming each day of survival into a victory over the hostility of the savage world. Thus Robinson learned that man can survive even in the most extreme conditions, provided he accepts to transform himself rather than wanting to transform the world around him.